Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday night. That's right. It's Q&A night. Steam and Demon first. Like that. Hello, Brenda. Good to see you. Bill, just here to see if I'm late. And I tell you what, I was actually ready to go at 7 o'clock. And then I was just trying to check everything. And then I forgot to check my microphone. So I am sure that I am on the wrong microphone already. We'll fix that right there. Made sure to invite Nick. Listening, I had to check outside because I wasn't sure if my trash cans and recycle bin were blowing over because it is windy. I know Weather Underground app says it's gusting to 27. It does not sound like 27 miles per hour out there. So hope all of you stay safe and warm tonight. Doesn't sound like it's going to be a fun evening at all out there, but it should be a fun evening here to talk some Chiefs football and the NFL and anything else you want to talk about and ask. As always, you drive the discussion. Anything you want to talk about tonight, Nick and I will talk about it. Varying degrees of enthusiasm, I'm sure. So I don't know if I have a whole lot to talk about tonight as far as monologues go or anything. It's been obviously, it seems like a month ago was the last Q&A, and going into that Q&A, we kind of had a suspicion based on what Andy Reid and Brett Veach said that maybe Travis Kelce was coming back. Not a lot about Trey Smith, and now we know that Trey Smith has been franchise tag. One of only two players that got the franchise tag this year, Trey Smith and T. Higgins. Pretty surprising. I mean, it seemed like there might be a couple of other candidates out there, and obviously a couple of them got deals. Dallas got a deal done with their possibility. So just two players. Trey Smith is one of them. And I know Trey, I'm absolutely positive Trey's going to, conversation will come up tonight. Matter of fact, I can already see a couple of Trey Smith questions. So, and as Brian always thankfully says for me, so I do not have to, yes, hit the like button, hit the bell, help share the Chiefs Digest channel so others can help to find it. Truly appreciate all the support that you all give here. So, like I said, I'm just probably trying to just dive right into it. Nick, as always, will be joining us later. So fire away with your questions, and we will hopefully have a great fun here tonight. Appreciate you all for coming in. So, yep, first official question, Bill. So, guys, the Chiefs trading Trey Smith or signing long term? I mean, and the Chiefs have been very tight-lipped about everything. I mean, Brett Veach typically holds his cards pretty close to the vest. There's not as many, leaks and rumors coming out of the Chiefs as there are a lot of other teams. So, there's not a lot of indications, but here's where I say that that's a good indication if you're in the camp that you want Trey Smith to stay in Kansas City. I'm certainly in that camp because I think he's a great player and he's a great person. He's somebody you want to be a part of your organization and can be a part of your fan base, that they can look to for a long, long time. The fact that there's no indication, there's no smoke out there at all that the Chiefs are thinking about trading Trey Smith. If there were, then I think that would be realistic. And remember, the Chiefs were, their philosophy heading into last week, their philosophy on this was that they would love to keep Trey Smith. They just were not certain that they could afford Trey Smith with the salary cap as they were expecting it to be, which was going to be about $270 million by their estimates. When the NFL came out and said, wait a minute, salary cap's going to be maybe closer to 280, that changed the equation. And when the word came out, it's going to be 279, that changed the equation. So now the Chiefs went from being like, hey, wait a minute, this keeping Trey Smith now is an option. Making a trade for Trey Smith doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the Chiefs from this standpoint because, trying to if they're in a position where they have to trade Trey Smith, if that's the philosophy, if that's the reason why they tagged Trey Smith, then they have to get the deal done very quickly. And two, it's going to come out of nowhere. So now you've had a player who has expected that he's either going to sign a long-term deal in Kansas City or he's going to hit free agency and get the best deal that he can. And now you're telling him that you've just tagged him and you're going to control where he goes and you're going to try and get more out of him. I get that happens. Last year it happened with L'Jarius Sneed, but the Chiefs were up front the entire way. I know L'Jarius still wasn't happy about it because I think he wanted to stay in Kansas City, and I think he was obviously disappointed with the way it came down. I know that, there were some hard feelings from the L'Jarius side of things, and I completely get that because you don't want to be the guy that doesn't get to stay in KC and doesn't get to be a part of it. And maybe there was some he said, she said about him staying and everything. But when they put the tag on him, it was with the indication, hey, go find your deal. And if you can find a trade, we'll make it happen. That's not what has happened in this case. And if you change it from a player getting the message from you that they're either going to get a long-term deal or they're going to get an opportunity to hit free agency and test their value, and then you say, tell you what, no, we're going to not only tag you, but now we're going to trade you and we're going to keep you from going maybe where you want to go. We're going to control where you go. That sends a terrible, terrible message. That sends a terrible message to future free agents. It sends a terrible message to your players that you've got now. I mean, it doesn't necessarily affect the player that you get a deal done with. I mean, if you pay Trent McDuffie his money, Trent McDuffie will probably still sign in Kansas City. But it's not any different than a team that puts a franchise tag on a player and then takes it back. It sends a terrible message to the player, to an organization, to everybody. Sends a terrible, terrible message. And the Chiefs, they don't want that. I mean, they want to come out of this with, Trey Smith, and they don't want to come out of this with having a bad look for the organization. And that's what trading Trey Smith at this point would have. You can look at it everything you want to. The fact that guards don't typically get you a whole lot in trade value. Look today. I mean, Jonah Jackson going. I mean, and this is notable to me because if you're talking about the possibility of Trey Smith being a trade target, one of the most likely possibilities that everybody had been talking about was that the Chicago Bears were interested because they had a clear need. Trey Smith was going to be the best player on the market. They would be either interested in him or as a free agent or as a trade possibility. So now the Bears go out and get a guard. They get a starter from the Rams in Jonah Jackson, and they gave up a 6th-round pick. Well, no, Trey Smith's not getting a 6th-round pick, but is he getting a 3rd-round pick? Maybe. You don't tag the trade Trey Smith for a 3rd-round pick. I mean, that's just... So when you put all of these factors together, there's just no way that it makes any sense for the Chiefs to be putting Trey Smith on the market. So I just, based on the silence that we're getting around this team and the situation, I have no reason to believe that the Chiefs are trading Trey Smith. I mean, can a crazy scenario happen? Sure. I mean, negotiation between the Chiefs and Trey could go south. I mean, things happen. Things can go haywire. Maybe Trey comes back and says he wants to trade. That's the only way I could see it happening, is if there is a 1% scenario, less than 1% scenario, I think, where things get so far south that becomes the solution. Chiefs want Trey Smith. I think Trey Smith, I'm pretty sure, wants to be in Kansas City. I know he wants and deserves to make a lot of money too. So if they can figure out a way to make that happen, I think that they will. I think it's going to be sooner than later. We'll see, Tyler bringing up what's the likelihood of Chiefs signing Trey Smith long-term sooner rather than later so they can have that potential money to spend in free agency. And that's a huge factor too. And that's a little bit of, the reverse of the L'Jarius Sneed situation last year, which was the Chiefs reached a point where they did not feel that they could get a long-term deal done with Trey Smith. So the decision was to tag and to trade. But they could not let that situation go on too long because they needed that money back off of the L'Jarius Sneed franchise tag. Same thing is here, but this time, instead of looking to trade Trey Smith, they're looking to get a deal done. So absolutely correct, Tyler. I mean, that's why I think that the likelihood of something getting done in the next 10 days is pretty high. I mean, and that's just pure gut. I mean, this isn't from a source in the organization or close to Trey, anything like that. And if I get a source close to either side, I'll let you know. This is just gut observation here at this point. I mean, because the Chiefs, there's a couple of ways that they can do it. I mean, they can get some money short term if they need to just get a couple of things done. Because right now, I mean, under the salary cap, only 51 top contracts get counted. So you can add players to your roster right now that aren't going to add to your cap. And even then, I mean, you can add players who are not even like vet minimums. You can add these players, and they don't add as much to your cap because remember, they're just knocking out the bottom salary that's listed. And I think right now, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Chiefs only have like 52 players under contract. It's somewhere around there. So they could get some small deals done. And if they converted right now, I mean, with Trey Smith's franchise tag, I mean, technically they don't have any cap room. They need to do one thing. If they just restructured and took the Patrick Mahomes roster bonus, converted that into a signing bonus, they'd instantly have enough money for Trey Smith. And they could do a couple of other things too. I mean, Chiefs aren't going out and spending $18 million in a left tackle. I think I can say that safely. I'm not sure that they can't guarantee they won't. I just don't get the indication right now. And as Steeman points out here, you know, if you believe Post, the Chiefs are currently $17 million over the cap. I don't think it's that much, Steeman, at least right now with the 51. So even with Mahomes, you would only have $8 to $10 million to spend. Now Mahomes has a couple of things in his contract. If you do the roster bonus, which I believe is $32 million for this year, you can recoup 80% of that. So, you know, you can get back about $26 million of that to free up for cap space this year if you did the full amount, which I think there's a reasonable chance the Chiefs might actually do this year. And they don't have to. I mean, they can do it in chunks. So they could do part of the roster bonus now. They could technically push the roster bonus back and do it later, although they typically do it with the roster bonus just once. There's some other finagling that they can do with it. He also has like a $16 million base salary this year too, though, which they can do later. I mean, if they wanted to convert that salary into signing bonus later in the year, if they want to do it in August, September, I mean, they can do that later if they need to for even more money to free up. So the $17 million, I think, is probably a little much right now, Steve. It might be reasonably close. But I don't know that it's necessarily that much. But with Mahomes, you would get a little bit of money, so you could at least participate in the first, you know, second and third waves of free agency, and that's where I think the Chiefs are going to be. I don't think they're going to go out. I mean, if they keep anybody in free agency, I mean, those will be their big free agents, the guys of their own that they are signing in the first wave. I think they'll probably sign more of their own guys even in the second and third waves. But if they add any players, it's probably going to be in the second and third wave. So it probably won't be until maybe the 14th or the 15th next week. I mean, I could be surprised. Maybe they will be a bigger player earlier than I think. But I certainly get the sense that the Chiefs are kind of planning on just sitting back, waiting to see how the first wave unfolds, and then scooping in to try and pick up some bargains and trying to focus on some of their own players. So we'll see if it happens like that. But yeah, I mean, I think that something with Trey Smith gets done sooner than later. So I know Nick's going to join us here in a minute. I might just get his thoughts about what he thinks about the Trey Smith situation too. Just to get that off the top of the show, and then we can just refer you back, because I know that's going to be a hot topic tonight. We'll probably get some more questions about Trey Smith, but I think it gets done sooner than later. I will be interested to see, you know, if it does get done, just how big of a contract it is, because I know that typically, hey, if you tag a player, the conventional wisdom is that becomes the floor. That tag number becomes the floor for an annual value contract. That was why, you know, I know that the deal that got done in Dallas with Osa was, you know, kind of a surprise, because his average annual value on that contract came out to what was below what the franchise tag would have been. Chiefs didn't use it, or the Cowboys didn't use the franchise tag, but his extension was below that and surprised a few people. I wouldn't necessarily even be stunned if Trey Smith took less than 23.4 on average. I mean, 23.4 million on average for a guard is a astronomical amount. So it would absolutely completely blow away the guard market as it is. That'd be $5.4 million more than what Creed Humphrey's making. And yes, different position, center guard, but Still best center in the league by my opinion and a lot of other people's opinion. And one of the top guards blowing that away by $5.5 million almost would be a surprise. So I will, like I said, I'm not going to be surprised if a deal with Trey gets done. My feeling is about 10 days would be a great deadline. I mean, there's not really a deadline either side has, to my knowledge, but the Chiefs would love it to be sooner than later. I think Trey would love it to be sooner than later. If they're not far away on money, there's no reason why something can't get done. So we'll see what happens. And the Chiefs obviously do need to have something done. So they do have some motivation. So we'll see if they're able to get that. But I think March 14th, give or take, is at least a good first estimate. It may extend beyond that. Maybe this turns into a quagmire. We'll see. But that's at least my general thought so far. Going over to Dez on the super chat. Thanks as always, Dez. Appreciate that. Any word on a Nick Bolton deal? And that's also been super quiet. I mean, on both sides. Haven't really heard anything from the Chiefs side of the equation or the Nick Bolton side. The Trey Smith and Travis Kelce conversations, I think, have just completely eaten the Nick Bolton conversation. So there hasn't been a lot of smoke on this one either, and I'm kind of surprised by that. Let's see what happens. I mean, again, the Trey Smith, deal, a lot of things have to happen in a quick period of time. I mean, like I said, if the Chiefs do a restructure on Patrick Mahomes, rather, they do that moving of the roster bonus to a signing bonus, they could also get something done with a Nick Bolton. I mean, I'm expecting that Bolton, it's really hard. I mean, to figure out where Nick might end up. I feel like he's probably going to end up in at least the $10 to $13 million range. I wouldn't be surprised if especially if Bolton leaves. I mean, I think Nick would be leaving for something closer into the $13 to $15 million range. I think the Chiefs would like to come in under that. So it's going to be a lot up to, Nick and what he wants and the Chiefs and how they can structure a deal. But there shouldn't be anything at least precluding it. If the Chiefs want to get something done with Bolton, they can get something done with him. That could be done in the first wave. So that wouldn't have to be something that they need to wait on. So, but once again, deadlines make deals. The closer you get to noon, which in this case actually is 11 a.m. Kansas City time, when agents can start negotiating with teams on behalf of the players. And once you start getting offers in at 11 a.m., that's kind of a Monday. That's basically a deadline. If you're the Chiefs, you want to get something done before then. And obviously, this is when things can get done. Chris Jones got done last year on the Friday night before the deadline. So the last 48, 72 hours before the deadline of when the free agency negotiating window opens, a lot of things can get done. So I think there's a definite possibility that would be the window in which a Nick Bolton deal could get done. I do get the sense that the Chiefs want Nick Bolton back. It is just going to be if they can make the price and value all work. We'll see. Steeman also with the super chat. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, sir. Talked about Donovan Smith today, and I'll fill you a little bit on that in case you did not see it today. Can Nick say if Donovan is a possible Band-Aid, the Chiefs looking at him? When Nick pulls in here in a minute, I'll definitely ask him about that. But referring to the Donovan Smith news and what came up, good friend of ours, Jeff Fedotin over at Forbes, had the story about Donovan Smith wanting to come back for 2025, and that the reason he missed the 2024 season was because of a hip injury that he suffered during training in May. He was, at that point, a free agent, just looking to see, where he might go in 2024. The injury knocked him out. The Chiefs, was told, checked on him several times during the season as possibility, even as late as December. They checked on Donovan Smith before the DJ Humphrey signing to see where he was health-wise, see if he'd be interested and be able to come in. And the word then was that he was still dealing with the injury. The implication, the suggestion at the time was that it was the stinger that he'd been dealing with that had obviously, limited him to a few games, knocked him out. The Wanye Morris filled in for him back in 2023. And that was what was, keeping him out of the 24 season. It turns out it was a hip injury that I'm not sure that anyone else knew about it. It had ever really gone public. I hadn't seen or heard about it until yesterday, until last night when it was in Jeff's story. So that's why Donovan Smith sat out the 2024 season, was because of that hip injury. Hey, if he's fully healthy, I can see the Chiefs absolutely being interested, and we'll see what Nick thinks about, where he could fit in. But I think that the Chiefs are they're going to throw numbers at the left tackle situation. And, one of those numbers, it could be Donovan Smith. And let's ask Nick, the man himself, what he thinks about that possibility.
Tuesday greetings, Matt. Tuesday
greetings. Nick, how are you?
Comment land. I'm good.
How's the wind at your place?
Same as at yours, since we live near each other.
It actually sounds relatively quiet right now, but
yeah, no, business isn't going to kick off till about 10. So you just give it time. Give it time, Matt.
Let's hope it stays quiet for everybody. But anything on your mind tonight as you're sitting in with this? Or?
No, not at all. I am here. I am a blank slate right now. Until I get asked the same question about 5 or 6 times, then I will be less of a blank slate.
Well, I got 2 questions for you early, and then a couple of those, hey, we can just start referring people. So, okay. But since we're on the topic of Donovan Smith right now, let's wrap that one up. Do you see Donovan Smith possibly still being an option at left tackle for the Chiefs in 2025 if he's healthy?
I think it could be one of the doors they have to go. And that's not meant to be mean in any way, shape, or form. I think you would have been serviceable this year if he'd been healthy out there, and I think the Chiefs would have brought him back. I think the Chiefs would have used him if he was healthy. Or healthy enough to be on the football field. Let's put it that way. Because at his age, he's got a lot of wear and tear that he's taken on as a tackle in the NFL. So, I mean, once guys get to the age, they're never really actually healthy. They can still physically perform. So you would still want insurance behind him, whether that would be a DJ Humphries or somebody who's not on the roster yet or somebody they draft that they're developing. But Donovan, you don't have to coach up. You don't have to develop. He's already there. You're just managing like you're doing at 4 other positions on the offensive line likely this year.
Yeah, I mean, they're only 6 months apart. DJ Humphries is 6 months younger than Donovan Smith. And essentially both of them are coming off a year they didn't play. I mean, DJ Humphries obviously played a little bit for the Chiefs at the end of the season, and Donovan Smith didn't play any. I mean, they're both coming off basically lost and missed seasons. So I don't know that they're, from that standpoint, that there's a terribly big difference between the two of them as far as, one, their injury situation, and 2, the mileage. If anything, I might be slightly less concerned about a hip injury than I am with an ACL and a knee injury. Even though, in this case, Donovan, I guess, you could certainly make the cases, DJ Humphries, you can make the case that he's in year 2, should be better than he was when coming in for the Chiefs this year, having a full off season, kind of build up his strength and everything. But I mean, hey, if you can find a way to keep both these guys, or in this case, keep DJ Humphries and add Donovan Smith, I mean, that would fit with what appears to be the Chiefs' strategy, which is throw numbers at the problem. I mean, try to get a couple of veterans to compete for this, get some young guys to compete for this, maybe spend a draft pick on the position. I mean, that seems much more likely the Chiefs' philosophy than to spend a huge amount in free agency on a player that you're probably going to have some injury concerns about.
Look, at the end of the day, if I'm in the Chiefs' shoes and I'm spending the money, I am definitely calling Ronnie Stanley and seeing what the number is, seeing what the guarantees are. And if there was an offer the Chiefs were considering to put their way, I would put that their way. And then come in, do the physical, see where that's at, project it with your training staff, with doctors, whoever you need to, go through everything, and then go from there. But, I mean, to me, Ronnie is kind of, if you're truly trying to improve the position and have to do as little coaching as possible on it, and have somebody who manages and can give confidence to Patrick Mahomes at left tackle, then Ronnie Stanley gives you that best option at this current point. Now, what I'm saying is down the road here, he may not play the entire year. Like that's the risk you take in signing him with where he's at in his career. Same thing with Donovan Smith. Same thing with DJ Humphries. Those are all guys who may get hurt at some point in the year. That's why you need somebody young that you develop as a second or third option at the left tackle spot behind them if you have to get to that point, or if you have to move somebody along the offensive line over to that side. But more than anything else, if you're going to spend money on somebody who's not a part of the Chiefs organization that you're not trying to re-sign, then left tackle is more than likely that spot you go.
There you go. And obviously the big question tonight, Nick, so I'm going to circle back to this one to see what you think is on Trey Smith. We'll answer it once, Nick, and then we won't have to worry about it for the next hour and a half, I promise.
No, that's fine.
But
I'll see good things about Trey Smith all day long.
What's your sense of just where things are as far as, the Chiefs, Trey Smith? I mean, is there an option? Do you feel like that they would consider trading Trey Smith, getting a long-term deal done? How do you feel like it right now? Get a sense of where the situation is.
If there was no point in tagging him if you're trying to trade him, like that just doesn't make sense to me. You just let him walk and go find his home. You show him that level of respect for what he did for your organization and help you get to those 2 Super Bowls and gave you everything he had, and sometimes looked like he played hurt out there and soldiered his way through sometimes to where when people want to take shots at him and say he's not an elite pass blocker, he's not this or he's not that. Well, there's times that guy is playing through ankle injuries and got his ankle stepped on at games, and you could see it bothering him for a couple weeks on end. Guess what? Trey's still on the football field and still gave everything he had. There's times he has holding penalties. You know why he has holding penalties? Because him and his right tackle aren't on, his right tackle is vertical setting significantly part away. And Trey Smith's got to make the choice. Do I hold this defender so 15 can stay upright and play another down and keep the Super Bowl hopes alive? Or do I worry about getting a better PFF grade? Or do I worry about having the fans think I'm a more elite pass blocker whenever I'm not put in a favorable position from a pass protection perspective? Trey deals with what the scheme allows him to do, as Creed Humphrey does, as Joe Thuney does. Those guys are all talented offensive linemen. They are what make that offense go and be able to do what they're able to do from an interior perspective. As Matt and I talked about in the previous podcast on Sunday, the parts are there. 4 out of 5 of those parts, they're there. Other offensive line coaches could probably do a better job with it. But you've got what you've got, and you've put yourself in the situation you have. So people got to earn their money and do what needs to be done. Because that's why you get paid, is to solve those problems, to develop those players, and to make it happen.
There you go. And I'm glad you used the talking about that level of respect, because I think that's a better phrase than anything I came up with earlier. But that is essentially the situation, which is that if you're the Chiefs and you've been in a spot, underscoring what I said earlier, that you've led Trey Smith to believe that you're either going to sign a long-term deal with him or let him test free agency. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you just come along with, hey, we've got $7.9 million in cap space we didn't know we were going to have. So we're going to tag you and maybe trade you. That is a terrible message to send to players and to future free agents, everybody like that. Because what you're saying is that you can't be trusted. Your word isn't necessarily, have value. So you don't want to be that kind of an organization. Brett Veach doesn't want to be that kind of GM. So that's why I'm like, once they put the tag on Trey Smith, I mean, they're signing Trey Smith. Is there a possibility that they stay in the tag? I mean, it's not 100%. Nothing's 100%, but I still don't get the sense that this organization was tagging Trey Smith unless they thought that a long-term deal was a likely outcome.
Yeah, and here's where I'm gonna hammer the point home for everybody right now. I'm going to do an exclamation point dunk, as I would call it in the shot sheet whenever I'm writing for something. The exclamation dunk point I'm going to put for you. We've talked about this on the show before. Trey Smith, in my opinion, is one of the leaders along that offensive line. And in my opinion, is the leader. He's the guy who, in my opinion, helps set the tempo for that offensive line. He is one of those guys that I feel like can take younger guys under his wing and kind of help guide them through, navigate the NFL world. And above all else, can help them navigate the Chiefs culture and try to help set the tempo of how they want to practice, how they want to go about things, and how they approach things, whether it's in a meeting room or on the football field. And that's what I've seen up at training camp before. That's what I've seen in practices we get to see from time to time during the offseason and OTAs and minicamp and everything, Trey doesn't take plays off out there. Neither does Creed. That's how they roll. They go out there, they give 100%, just as Coach Reed would say. That's how they roll. So you want guys like that are your foundational pieces to help set that. Your foundational pieces on this roster in the years ahead is Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce's still there right now. He's earned that right. He's that guy. Chris Jones is another one of those pillars. Now, your next pillars are coming up, in my opinion, in Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, and potentially Trent McDuffie. We'll see if Nick Bolton is a part of that foundational piece by what happens here in the weeks ahead. But those are your foundational pieces that you currently have and you're building towards in the future. So, like I said, and Justin Reed in my opinion, was a part of that. And before him, Tyrann Mathieu was a part of that. And, we'll see if Jaden Hicks can kind of grow into that role, or if there's another safety veteran that they are going to have in that either in free agency or, whatever the heck happens here in the weeks ahead. So you need guys in each room to really set the tempo, to be who they are. And in the past, Juju Smith-Schuster was that guy for the wide receiver room. Running back room, Samaje Perine probably was that guy this year. But you're trying to, as you get younger and you try to get more explosive and you try to get faster, you've got to have those next wave of guys. And by how you pay them and how you treat them determines I know this sounds weird to say, but I had football players tell me this a long time ago that have played for the Chiefs and played for other organizations, and coaches have told me this. The locker room views who you are, and Terez used to say this all the time too. I want to give him credit too. What you are paid is honestly kind of the level the locker room gives you respect-wise, because the organization sees it that way. So they see you as one of those people. And if you go out on the league in the open market and the league pays you a certain dollar amount, then you get that certain level of respect in that room because a team was willing to invest in you at that level. So for somebody like Trey Smith, I consider him one of the leaders of the Chiefs organization. He's always willing to talk. He's always willing to, answer the questions as best as he can. There's times where you may have to ask him a question that he can't answer, can't give away secrets or reveal things of a game plan for the upcoming week or what potentially happened. But you and I talk about what we visibly see on tape to give the fans what they want to know and what they're craving and what we think it is. We may not always be 100% right, but that's also because we're not in the coaches' room and we're not in the room with the players when they go over and coaches' film. We give you our best guess and go from there.
Yeah, and I'm glad you because as you were talking about that and the toughness of Trey, I was thinking about the fact that there were a couple of times this season that, I'd go into the locker room and, maybe he's got something on his wrist or something or else. And I'm like, hey, Trey, you okay? He's like, yeah, it's nothing. I mean, he plays with pain. He and Creed are both those guys. Because remember, too, I mean, Creed played through that wrist injury last year in 23 and never complained about it. I mean, Chiefs fans were complaining nothing but about the snaps and having some issues and everything like that. And his wrist was absolutely killing him, but he played through that. And just goes to speak about the toughness of those two guys, and especially the fact that, hey, if they're not going to blame anything on injuries. I mean, they're not just those kind of guys. So, and those are two dudes that they don't need the money to have the respect of the locker room, but you better sure when they get paid, there's going to be people in that locker room who are happy.
Yeah.
So. Stick with the super chats. Appreciate that tonight. Everybody's really getting involved, being generous. So thank you. I truly appreciate that. Black and gold. How concerning is the cornerback spot outside of McDuffie? Obviously, Jalen Watson came back and was able to, stabilize that at the end of the season, that position a little bit, Nick. But I mean, are you 100% set with the Chiefs at the cornerback spot? Because I don't think the Chiefs are. I mean, I think they definitely want another cornerback to be in that top 3 rotation and maybe even be ahead of Jalen Watson. They may even want an upgrade from there. I mean, they like Jalen Watson's play, but I think they definitely want somebody who can compete at that level, or at least compete for the number 2 spot behind McDuffie.
Well, and here's where you're going to kind of look past this year. Trent McDuffie, you have the 5th-year option on him, so you buy yourself another year if you're not able to get a contract extension done, and we'll find out that answer after the draft and early in May there. But I think we all know the answer on that front. Yes. Jalen Watson, this year's a contract year for him. Joshua Williams, this year's a contract year for him. Najee Johnson, contract year for him. Brian Cook, contract year coming up. They're all in the final years of their rookie contract, so that Chiefs secondary that they've been able to ride the wave of for 2 out of 3 Super Bowls and to be there for 3 Super Bowls. This is the final year before the bill comes due for some of them before they hit the market and maybe test elsewhere. So this is where, like last year, the Chiefs drafted Kingsley Suamataia, Hunter Norzad, and C.J. Hansen, and then signed Ethan Driscoll, the undrafted free agent, to potentially be an heir apparent right tackle down the road here, hopefully. That's what the Chiefs may have to do at part of their secondary this year. Because when you look at it, Jaden Hicks is going to be one of the safeties long term. He's only on the second year of his contract, so you got another 2 years on top of that. You're expecting Trent McDuffie back, and then after that, you just got question marks of what your secondary is going to look like in the next 2 to 3 years. So do I think the Chiefs are going to need to add some cornerbacks? Yeah, they're going to need to add some cornerbacks this year just to not have a massive hole next year if they aren't able to re-sign some players. But on top of it, they need to add competition because the Chiefs were having to look for a Marcus Lattimore potentially to trade for him. Ended up going to Washington, and honestly, it all kind of worked out the best for everybody on that front. And that's where the Chiefs, they need more picks more than anything else. They need more draft picks because they got a lot of holes they need to fill from that 2022 draft class that's gonna come up here, and they aren't forced to have to pay some of those guys.
Yeah, obviously they've leaned pretty hard on that 2022 draft class to give them production at that corner spot. And again, I mean, outside McDuffie, you're talking about some later round picks there that they've been able to trust and invest in. And, Jalen Watson gave them incredible, per value with his selection. But then in the last 2 drafts, spent a 7th rounder on Nick Jones and a 6th round on Kamal Hadden. Obviously the Hadden pick did not work out at all.
And Nick Jones is with the Giants now.
And Nick Jones with the Giants now. So you don't have anything. I mean, you've got I'm setting Shamari Connor outside that conversation because he's technically a safety. We'll call him a defensive back because that's what he calls himself, but not a true corner. So, you don't have anything that you invested in the draft the last couple of years at that spot. But there's 2 things. I mean, one, obviously, there might be some decent corners out there in free agency in the 2nd and 3rd waves that maybe you can get at a value. But 2, if you're the Chiefs, I mean, I would feel pretty confident that if you get, if you get Dave Merritt the right talent, and then and not force him. I mean, I'm not saying that he can't do it, and I'm not saying that the Jalen Watsons can't come in and give you good play as a rookie, but give him at least a 3rd or a 4th round pick to work with. I mean, I have a tremendous faith that if you get value for Dave Merritt, he's going to turn it into something pretty quickly and at least give you a piece that can be a rotational piece or push for playing time, maybe push to be a starter. Who knows? And if you're the Chiefs, maybe the right player falls to you at the right spot, whether it's in the 1st or 2nd round. Like you said, I mean, the Chiefs need more draft picks, so they might need to try and maneuver around this board a little bit in a way that lets them pick up some more draft picks. But if they take a shot in the draft at corner and it's not a late day 3 pick, I'll be pretty optimistic because their scouting has generally been pretty good at that position and their coaching has obviously been fantastic. So let's see what happens. But I mean, how concerning is it? It's not like red flag level because I think Jalen Watson is a good player. Maybe he can be even better this year. I mean, he's had some injuries the last couple of years, obviously. Let's see what happens. But the Chiefs would like another competitive piece. And if that's free agency or not, we'll see. But it's like I said, maybe it's orange, Nick. It's certainly not, a 5-alarm fire yet, though. Nothing like that. Super chat from Dez. If Hollywood isn't re-signed, who are the best options to replace him? So, is there anybody out there in free agency, Nick, that if Chiefs don't get Hollywood, that you'd say to yourself, okay, that's a decent replacement?
If only there was a podcast where we went over this past Sunday to answer this question.
Oh, yeah, we did do that, didn't we?
If only we had a podcast that we did this past Sunday to answer that exact question. Only we had that.
Well, gosh, I have to go back and listen to the podcast now.
You've already forgot, too. That's cool. So, first name I had was Devontae Brown from the Commanders. He gives the most athletic ability that's on the open market. Second one, would be, I believe I had after him Josh Palmer, who I thought had some promise from the Chargers. Then I believe Tutu Atwell was the third individual from the Rams. And then at that point, I know I mentioned Taylor Wallace from the Ravens. He's really more of a returner, and he's just looking for opportunities. And I think I had Tyler Johnson from the Rams as well, but he didn't have a lot of explosiveness, and he wasn't a guy who was going to didn't look like a guy on tape that was going to break a ton of tackles and be able to do a lot to get that. Now, I mean, if you want to bring in Darius Slayton in the conversation, I guess you can, but I got a feeling Slayton's going to be looking for money and more opportunities somewhere else. So those are what I think is more realistic from a financial perspective of adding. I know somebody in the comment section after the podcast said that if those are the cases, and the Chiefs should just stick with their practice squad guys because those options weren't better. And look, it's not you're not going to have the who's who of wide receivers on the open market. You know, people don't hit free agency that are elite players. They get paid. Like T. Higgins, been waiting 2 years to get his chance on the open market, got tagged twice. And so like he's missed that boat to where like he's just a really bad injury away from not being able to get the money that he's worked his entire life to get to this point and get that $100 million contract that he's more than deserving of on the open market. But the Bengals have franchised him twice now. And I mean, yeah, he's going to get $50 million, but it's not the 5 years, $100 million plus that he could. And Jamar Chase is going to get that $40 million per year average at receiver here probably in the next year or two. So, yeah, look, good free agents get re-signed, and teams like to sign them quicker if they're going to stay healthy, and if there's somebody that they feel is a very important piece of them winning and coaches being able to keep their jobs and cash their own checks and everything, then they really make sure that they get signed as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I'm looking at like Spotrac right now. They've got 15 receivers who are listed as being fourth-year players. So these are guys that, for the most part, will have just finished up their rookie contracts. Few that aren't. I mean, one of those, fourth-year receivers is Amir Smith-Marset, who's bounced around for a few teams, including being in Kansas City for a period of time. And, you kind of hit some of the best ones. I mean, Tutu Atwell, Josh Palmer. I mean, those are some of your best fourth-year receivers. You throw in like an Elijah Moore or a Rondale Moore. I mean, those are the types that are available. It's not like you said. I mean, you're not getting a T. Higgins that's going to hit free agency. They just don't do it. I mean, if you're capable of helping out a quarterback on a consistent basis, you're getting re-signed by your team. You're not hitting free agency. They're paying you. So that's the thing. And if you are out there, there's a reason why. And it could be that you're 32 years old, like a DeAndre Hopkins. It could just be that, you're just old, in which case, hey, the Chiefs might take a chance on a couple of those guys. They've done it before, so maybe they'll do it again. And I'll say this now, and I'll try not to say it a whole bunch of more times, Nick, because I don't want to be accused of being a total homer, although I can be a total homer. If there continues to be some of these ridiculous mock drafts that have Luther Burden falling out of the first round, and if he's available at 31, I would jump on that in a heartbeat. Because if Luther Burden is your third best receiver, you're going to have a really, really good receiving core.
It doesn't hurt if you have a top three wide receiver in this draft class fall to 31, or in that ballpark that you'd want to trade up for. That's not something I would ever be against. So looking at the 2021 class, are you ready for it here real quick, Matt?
Lay it on me.
Jamar Chase, part of the 2021 class. Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Rashad Bateman. This guy by the name of Nico Collins. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Heard of any of those people?
So far, I believe that a 100% rate of having been re-signed by their current teams.
Yes. So those were the guys who ended up being the top of the market. So you had the 5th overall pick, 6th overall pick, 10th overall pick, 27th overall pick. Then you got on Nico Collins, who was the 89th overall pick in the 3rd round, and St. Brown, who was a 4th round pick at 112. And then a lot of these guys I see on the list are going to be free agents here in a couple days. One of them has been a free agent for a bit longer, and that was Kadarius Toney. Then you have Elijah Moore from the Jets that got traded to the Browns. So what I'm getting at here is if they were top of the line in their draft class, they've already been re-signed by their team. So that's why the free agent market isn't going to be what fans hope for, what fans want. And the only reason T. Higgins would have been a part of this class is because they were able to franchise tag him. And then somebody like Brandon Ayuk, Justin Jefferson from the previous class, they all got signed before. So even if they had the fifth-year option, this would have been their year coming out. And then some guy named C.D. Lamb and then another guy named Jerry Jeudy. So again, like all those guys had the fifth-year options that would have been free agents. The teams already took care of them. The teams already made sure that they were there. So that's why the wide receiver market is what it is. And that's why the wide receiver market will normally be what it's going to be. So that's why drafting a wide receiver every year and having them available to where you maybe don't necessarily have to pay. So when ideally when you get to the point where you have to pay Rashee Rice a $100 million contract, you hope you already have two other receivers you've drafted year after year that are already developed to where if you have to make that decision where he gets back to 100% and you can decide then if you give him a long-term deal, if you trade him in the final year of his contract, or if you have to let him walk in free agency. So you just have to continually put yourself in that position to where in my book, you have to constantly evaluate where are the key spots where guys are going to get premium no matter what. Quarterback, left tackle on most teams, pass rushers, wide receivers are getting insane money these days. And then for some teams, corners. So in those spots, if you have enough draft picks to continually invest in year after year after year and continually target those spots, you always keep your costs down. Quarterback, you're just trying to hit on the guy. So like quarterback, you don't have to put in every single year. But all the other people we just mentioned position-wise, those are the ones that you continually invest in to make sure you keep the overall cost down. And it helps if you have a coach like Dave Merritt or Joe Cullen that can continually develop those guys. Because you can still invest in those players draft pick wise, but if you don't have a coach that can develop them, well, then there's your next problem.
Well, you make a really good point there, which I think I may have to just start adopting this into a philosophy and see if I can't craft it into one, because I think you're right. I mean, if I'm a GM, I would like to believe that every single year I would take an offensive tackle, a wide receiver, a pass rusher, and a corner, because you need those all the time. And if you just stumble on one all of a sudden, your fourth round pick is all of a sudden becomes a stud at one of those positions, you are set. Steamin' Demon's got an out of the box question for you, Nick, and I love this one. Shedeur Sanders' stock draft is imploding. Following the best player available scheme, would you take the Chiefs take Shedeur Sanders at 31?
No. You hope somebody calls you and wants to draft him and trades up to you.
That would be the best possible answer, yes. But curious, I mean, even if would you be okay with the Chiefs just taking Shedeur Sanders no matter what? Let's say they traded back in the second round, he was still there.
It's a wasted pick. It's a wasted pick if you do it, because you got a lot of other problems that really need to be addressed now that you're trying to help Mahomes. So like if you're like, hey, could have had a wide receiver or offensive tackle or defensive lineman who gets your pass rush there, or a corner, but you took a quarterback who's going to sit on the bench unless Mahomes gets hurt.
I wouldn't hate it, but I would, if I'm Brett Veach, I would have to have a conversation with Shedeur and a conversation with maybe just his dad first, but maybe both of them, one or the other, because both conversations have to be same thing. Would you be okay with this? Because if you're the Chiefs, you don't want a mess on your hands. So you don't need messiness. You don't need chaos. So only if the kid and the dad was okay with it would I even consider it. Because otherwise, let somebody else deal with it. Because if a player doesn't want to be there, never ends well. Make sure the player wants to be there. All right. And let's go back to the rest of the list here. Mark, who is replacing Mike Borgonzi? The Chiefs haven't made any official announcements yet as far as new staffing positions. I wouldn't even be surprised because sometimes they don't do that until after the draft with the front office. They just try to get through everything in place before they sort out the promotions and new hires. There's usually new people available. There are other remember a lot of teams that if they've hired a new GM, a lot of places will go ahead and have the current staff staying in place until after the draft. I know I saw. I'm trying to remember. Oh, it's the new GM in I think New York. It was talking about that, about the fact that hey, it's a lot easier to just swap out one person than it is an entire front office. So for him, it's just like I'm just coming in and learning what they're doing. We'll deal with the rest of it later, and that's the general philosophy in a lot of organizations. So, wouldn't be surprised until later, but. And the Chiefs might not even replace the role. I mean, they might just juggle some titles around, but I don't think there's any doubt that with Mike Borgonzi leaving, there's three guys who are kind of the next level up. I mean, if you look at the org chart right now, that would say Chris Shea is the number 2 guy in the organization behind Brett Veach in the front office. Mike Bradway would be 3. Tim Terry's probably 4, but there's a few others that could also filter in there. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bunch of promotions because nobody else is leaving right now, and Chiefs would love to be able to keep this group together. So we'll see what happens, but that's at least the way it kind of looks right now, Mark.
I have nothing to add to that, Matt.
Bill, do you see the Chiefs drafting another wide receivers in the first 3 rounds this year? Wouldn't mind it at all. Nick, you and I were just talking about you take a wide receiver every year. Are you okay with the Chiefs that they take one in the first 3 rounds?
They should every year. Not all 3 rounds, but yes, they should take a wide receiver every year in the first 3 rounds. Make a wide receiver one of them every time.
I have absolutely zero problem with that either. Is that a question for you, Nick?
It doesn't say my name on it. So.
I'm just kidding. But Brian's follow-up question. When can the Chiefs have decent footwork on the offensive line? Isn't 12 years not long enough to wait?
I don't know what you want me to say, man. I'm not in charge of the paychecks over there.
Well, that is also probably another segue to pointing to the podcast on Sunday, because on the 41 is the mic, we did a deep dive into the offensive line.
Yeah,
so
about 30 minutes worth. So if you want O-line talk, there's about 30 minutes worth on there.
Daniel, I know the Chiefs have thresholds that they like, but if Josh Simmons fell to 31, do you take him regardless of the arms? Talent surely outweighs that. That's how the Chiefs were able to get Trent McDuffie. My bigger problem, Josh Simmons had a torn patella, right, Nick?
Yeah, so he admitted at the combine. Here's the thing that a lot of people haven't caught up on, and each person I talk to that asked me about him, they're stunned when I tell them. Like, he flat out said at the combine that he had a torn patellar tendon. For offensive linemen, that's not good. When that
is not good. And I mean, I would like to think maybe he was misquoted, or, but if he had, I mean, frankly, if he had almost anything, even if it was a partial patellar tendon tear, that would be on my red flag do not draft list. I mean, I guess I would take him. Maybe it's the 5th round or the 6th round, maybe consider, but no, I mean, that's a bad one.
Matt, you know why? You know how I know he wasn't misquoted?
How was that? Did he double down on it? No, seriously.
Stacey Dales did a 90-second report during the O-line day about it.
Man.
And it's just flown under the radar, man. It is flown under the radar, and people continually, like, there's people have chatted with. They're like, did you take Josh Simmons? I was like, he tore his patellar tendon in October.
Yeah, if he tore his patellar tendon, he is not playing this year.
But
and
hey, if you listen to what got leaked out to some of the national people, he is way ahead of schedule, better than any other.
Doesn't matter
in the world.
I mean, and that's the other sad thing for the kid is just that. I mean, patella tendons ruptures, they are just absolutely the worst possible injury almost an NFL player can get. I mean, I know there's a couple of others out there that are more career ending than that, but I'm a little bit sympathetic to this, Nick, because I've had two of them.
Yeah.
So I know about it.
You've been through
And
it,
I can name you off a lot of players who have had torn patella tendons. You know, Daddy Nicholas with the Chiefs was one of them. Lucas Niang was another.
Martez Rankins was another one who was a solid player, and then bottom dropped out whenever that happened to him.
I mean, you tear a patella tendon, and the average NFL career afterwards is like, I think the statistics are like 2.1 years, but like productive is like another year and a half. You just do not come back from them. I mean, Josh Simmons is young enough that maybe he does come back, but even now, I mean, I mean, the numbers would tell you that if he comes back, he's not going to be first round talent caliber. I mean, he might be, like I said, third or fourth or fifth round. I certainly would not take him. He'd be off my board unless maybe it's the sixth round.
I'm just curious from a scouting department, who's going to be the one that starts leaking it out for him to drop? Because I mean, like right now, like that's all fans are talking about. I was like, hey, would you take Josh Simmons at 31? And I mean, originally it was reported as an ACL. That's what everybody reported as, but then it finally snuck out at the combine that, yeah, hey, about that. This was actually this injury that for offensive linemen is almost as bad, if not worse, than having a back injury that just gets worse.
And you can't hide it at the combine because you got to go through the medicals. They're going to see your MRIs, everything. So, you know, there's no sneaking it by. So might as well address the elephant in the room, Nick.
We just spent a couple minutes pointing it out there with the spotlight.
Bill, Chiefs are to draft a running back. How soon in the draft would they go? I mean, this is a deep class, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, so there's some pockets there in the second round of some speed guys. It's just a matter of how the Chiefs feel about them. There's going to be some running backs probably there in the third round and late in the third round. And then there's going to be some opportunities there in the fourth and fifth, and there may be a couple in the sixth, but there's some guys I've got my eye on that I'm not going to say out loud right now because that'll ruin one of our podcasts down the road here. But there's a couple guys that are probably projected fourth, fifth round that I'm like, those would be the guys I would take. Those are the guys that I've been talking about, explosive running back, that people will understand if they see them in the Chiefs offense, what I mean by an explosive running back if the Chiefs go out and get a couple of those guys.
I mean, the reality is that Saquon Barkley is a unicorn. So if you say to yourself, hey, there's a Saquon Barkley in this year's draft, I mean, even if you think like Ashton Genty as if you think he's in that caliber, I mean, most chances likely he's not because nobody is in Saquon Barkley category. And if you find one, it's a miracle. But there's looks like some really good running backs. And, you know, and Brett Veach has been a guy who obviously sees late round value in the running back spot. But this seems like, you know, Brett's kind of usual philosophy on it is that, hey, you can find 1,000-yard running backs in the seventh round and undrafted if you scout well enough and you develop them well enough. But this right now, Nick, this year feels like there might be some starting stud running backs available in the fourth or fifth rounds. And we're not just talking about good running backs. We're talking about, you know, dominant running backs.
Yeah. So some of the names, I'll just be nice and I'll throw some names out at you. I won't tell you who I like and who I don't like. I'll just tell you some guys that are probably going to go around in the third round and on that if you want to start watching now, feel free to go watch them. Let's see. So some guys who are likely going to be in the second round, obviously Judkins from Ohio State, Amarian Hampton from North Carolina. I mean, some team may be brave and take him late first round, but I think he'll be he's an explosive back. He'll be there in the second round. Then you get Henderson from Ohio State, who's going to be pretty popular. I know Dylan Sampson from Tennessee is going to be popular for certain type of schemes when they run. Caleb Johnson, the running back from Iowa, very good zone runner. He's going to be pretty popular. DJ Giddens, we'll see from K-State where he ends up. Then Jordan James from Oregon is another guy you should definitely go check out. Devin Neal is an intriguing guy that I think is going to be late day 2, day 3 wise. Then Cam Scatterbo from Arizona State is a guy that's going to be very popular for the performances he put on. And Tutton from Virginia Tech is another guy that's going to be pretty intriguing. Korsky Merritt from Arizona is going to be another intriguing guy that has a lot of promise. Brashard Smith from SMU is a guy who you should go check out if you get time. RJ Harvey from UCF is another intriguing individual. And I could go on. And I think I already said Jordan James from Oregon. And if I didn't, I just did. So there you go. But and then I know Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State is another guy that the Chiefs reportedly spent time with in Indianapolis. So from a running back perspective, yes, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for the Chiefs if they want to double up and get 2 running backs. That's great, but if you do that, you need to trade down and get some more picks. Like I'm telling you, I think there's going to be some fun opportunities there in the 3rd and 4th round to really clean up the more 3rd and 4th round picks the Chiefs can get. So having that extra first right now at the top of the 3rd round, like that's big. Having that late 2nd round pick, that's big too. Those are 2 spots that I think the Chiefs could really clean up if they trade back a little bit and the teams want to offer them an additional 3rd and 4th to go back a couple spots. And then that 1st round pick, depending who's there at 31, like that's another spot where the Chiefs could trade back and easily pick up some 3rd and 4ths as well. But I think if the Chiefs can find a couple additional 3rd and 4ths, I think they can really do I think they can fill a lot of holes with some quality players that Chiefs fans will be really happy about and could rival or top the 2022 class.
There you go. Yeah, I think I get the crowd that will say that you should not draft a running back in the 1st round. And once again, it depends on when, where, and who the running back is. But this is definitely, I think, definitely time when you would say, hey, 2nd or 3rd round, it's not necessarily too early to take a running back. I mean, there are people saying that they've been doing this a long time, Nick. We're saying that this is like the best running back class that they've ever seen. So we'll see if it turns out to be hype or not. But
I got a challenge for everybody right now. If you're on Twitter, if you're on Blue Sky, share this with everybody and retweet it, especially right now.
There you go. I appreciate you, Nick. That's a great idea. I'm going to do it on Blue Sky because I've already done it a couple of times on Twitter, but I haven't done it on Blue Sky.
So and if you want to post this, so anybody that's in the comment section right now, anybody that's watching, I know or a lot of you watching, my challenge to each one of you right now is to copy and paste this YouTube link if you're watching it there and share that with your friends, your family, all over the socials.
There you go. We've got 6 likes tonight, which is a pretty good number, but we can do more than that. And if you are the one person watching on Facebook, you should also share it more on Facebook because I don't know why we don't, other than the fact that nobody watches videos on Facebook anymore. I do not know why nobody watches on Facebook. It's bizarre, but your mileage may vary. Chris, and this is the 2nd time I've been asked this today, Nick, and I don't know where it has come from. Do you have any feeling on whether Joe Thuney is going to retire? I've got no indication that Joe Thuney is going to retire, but am I crazy?
I mean, I fully expect him to play left guard this year. That's $20 million is a lot to walk away from.
I mean, Andy Reid seemed to certainly at the combine talk about him playing left guard. So I've got no indication that he's not. I would not blame Joe Thuney if he wants to walk away because he's done everything in the NFL that you could possibly do, and he's done it extremely well, and he's made some money. So best of wishes to him, but I've got no indication that he's ready to walk away. So we'll see what happens, Chris, but I've not heard anything like that yet. So we'll just put that in the I don't know if that's going to happen category. No, put it as I think Nick would usually say, don't worry about that. Right?
I already gave my answer. I'm moving on with my life.
You kind of alluded to this a little bit, but Brian, are the Chiefs going to address not having a 5th or 6th round pick somehow? If the Chiefs only have 6, all those starry-eyed fantasy pickers need to reel it in a bit.
Brian, here's the thing I was told by some members of the scouting community that stuck with me, and I want this to stick with you as well. With each passing year that players get NIL money and stay in college, the draft picks in the 5th, 6th, and 7th round you're not getting some of the same guys pushed down. So some of those younger guys that may have come out after they've been 3 years out of school, maybe they're 20, 21, 22, some of those guys are staying in college for that extra year. and because the NIL money is actually better than the round they potentially may be drafted in. So then that just causes the effect of where some of those guys that we're talking about are hypothetically fourth or third, fourth, or fifth round talent this year. They may have actually been around lower than that, depending on how many of those guys would have come out that stayed in college for NIL deals or used the transfer portal to try to go to a better scheme to help themselves. So the NFL is feeling the effects of the NIL deal and the transfer portal that allows a guy to try to get top earnings throughout their entire college career, and then on top of it, try to put themselves in the right scheme so they can make the best money possible. So that's why I think when you see trades out there and everything for players, especially in August and everything, you're going to see a lot of 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks being traded away because teams see the value right now in 1st through 4th rounds. So that's where, like what I said earlier, if you can get more 3rd and 4th round picks, like do it, because those can give you some unique value right now because of the college landscape.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, that has a reciprocal effect in other ways too, because you also have to adjust, and teams I think are going to have to adjust a little bit about what their value of 5th, 6th, 7th round picks and trades are. As far as just how much you have to give up to maybe move up in some certain spots, and because you're right. I mean, teams just don't feel like the same value that 5th, 6th, 7th round picks had maybe 5 years ago. So it's going to be a change that kind of goes back, and it's got a lot of effects down the road. Brian, could the answer at left tackle be Kingsley with a shiny new doctorate in footwork? Brian is obsessed with offensive line and offensive tackle footwork tonight. How feasible is that?
I mean, he should be working out with somebody off season that whoever, and it should be his cousin Panay Sewell. So wherever Panay Sewell wants to go, wherever Sewell's working out at, whoever his O-line coach is, Kingsley should be with him every day doing the same stuff, trying to get up to that level to where he can play along the offensive line or force the issue to be on the offensive line. But you don't bank on that right now because you can only bank on what you know, not what you're projecting. Because when you project, sometimes you get burned, just like they did last year.
There you go. Going to this Pono question, even though we've kind of talked a little bit about this, but it's kind of in a different angle of this question I want to take, Nick. Tackle Simmons in the draft, injured. DJ Humphries injured. Donovan Smith injured. Why are the Chiefs reaching and hoping on injury-plagued tackles? And then, mentioning Ronnie Stanley injured. But that's kind of where the Chiefs are, right? I mean, there's not I'm going to start sounding like, was it Ned Yost talking about the third base tree for the Royals? Yep. I'm going to start sounding like there's no left tackle tree. So, I mean, if you want a left tackle, I mean, there's not a Maserati out there, Nick, but are there some beat up ones out there that maybe you can fix up and turn it into a, nice, shiny new left tackle? Maybe not new, but I mean, that's your best option for the Chiefs, right? It's to take a chance on maybe a couple of different guys. Maybe it is an injured left tackle. Maybe it's somebody who's older. Maybe it's just a young guy. I mean, you're talking about maybe placing 3 or 4 bets and hoping one of them pays off.
So the best way I can answer this, Serpano, is those are the options you have available. And those options are out there because of the reasons you just mentioned. So you either take those options and, like Matt said, hope it pans out and hope it hits jackpot, or you draft and develop at an effective level. Those are your options. Those are the reality you have, and that's what you got to deal with.
Alex, can you tell me if the Chiefs are going to make it a priority to keep Brown? Does Brown want to be a Chief? I mean, every indication I've gotten from both sides is that Hollywood Brown wants to stay in Kansas City, and the Chiefs would like to have him. I mean, I can't necessarily tell you that it's the number one thing on Brett Veach's mind right now. I think it's amongst the top things on his mind. I mean, when you're talking about maybe the wide receiver position, it might be the number one thing on his agenda is trying to keep Hollywood Brown. So it might be just the distinction of how top of a priority it is. Obviously, I think the Chiefs have other priorities, but they would love to keep Hollywood. But Matt, again, Nick, it's the right price because I don't see how you give Hollywood any team in the NFL could give Hollywood more than a 1-year prove it deal, unless you're a team that the only way that you can get Hollywood Brown is by giving him a multi-year deal. But I mean, coming off another injury-riddled season, I mean, a 1-year prove-it deal with a bunch of incentives is the only thing that makes sense to me. And it's just a matter of whether or not the Chiefs can put together a deal like that makes sense for Hollywood.
So, I mean, there's some wide receiver needy teams out there in free agency, and T. Higgins coming off the board helped. So there's a chance Hollywood Brown could get an offer from another team that's $10 million or more a year. And if that's the case, then he's probably going to take that deal and deserves to take that deal. If it's something where the Chiefs could bring him back at $7 per year or less on either a 1-year deal or a multi-year deal, then hey, I'm all for it. But I mean, there's going to be, I think there's going to be a market for him more so than we realize, just because of where that wide receiver draft class is at and the perception of it and just what's out there available in free agency.
Can't disagree with any of that. I mean, and I will say this as just a snide remark, Nick, and this is nothing against Hollywood. This is just on his situation, given the injury situation of where he's at. If you're an NFL team giving Hollywood Brown a multi-year deal, you are probably one of the 8 teams in the league that do not know what they're doing right now. But
some teams just might be desperate enough to do it.
Dez, back with a super chat. Nick, if Will Johnson drops to the 20s like McDuffie, should KC trade up? I know you're still powering through your draft guys. So
I'm not even in the cornerback realm. So any cornerback draft questions, like Brian asked about if there's any plug and play, and this one about corner, I'm not in that corner realm. And guess what? I'm not going to be in that corner realm for quite some time. So I'm not there yet.
There you go. So Des, we owe you one. So make sure you cash that one back in, and I'll put a pin in this, Nick, so that we answer that one for Des for free when you've gotten through the corners. So always appreciate the super chat, Des, and we'll get into that. I promise. This is not exactly related. This is more vague. But Brian, are there any plug and play corners after 63? I mean, Nick, I couldn't tell you by names right now, any of them, but yeah, I mean, there almost always are plug and play corners after 63. There's somebody who's going to be taken in the 3rd round or later who's going to start for NFL teams this year. Probably more than one guy.
Yeah, just answer Brian's question. Thing right before with that one.
KC Chiefs 12. If Luther Burden is there at 31, do you think the Chiefs draft another wide receiver in the 1st round or draft a D line at that position?
If you get a chance to get a top-notch receiver, you take it. That's where best player trumps need. Like, I mean, there's going to be some good defensive linemen in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round. That's why I keep saying get more picks if you can in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round. If there's ability to trade back and get more of them, do it. But yeah, if a Luther Burden's there at 31, like, I'm not going to be against it. If there's guys that drop that shouldn't be there, that are talented, like, I'm not going to be against the Chiefs going in different directions each time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still baffled at some of those prognosticators who still think that Luther Burden's falling out of the 1st round, especially after he had a really good combine. I'm even more baffled.
Matt, the people digging around at the combine found out that scouts aren't that high in this wide receiver class. So everybody's adjusting accordingly based off
There's
of
that.
It did not matter what was happening on the testing. Once they got told by people that they trust that are actually in the league doing this and giving them their advice and their perspective on this, that's why people are dropping. That's why people are rising up the boards or shooting up the boards, is because they finally talked to multiple people that said the same thing, and they're just finally catching up to something that's already been discussed in draft rooms across the country of the 32 NFL teams.
This is kind of a trifecta of questions here in the same category, because KC Chiefs 12 was asking about a wide receiver or defensive line at 31. I mean, if you got a 1st round grade on both of them, great, but I would imagine that you're lucky to get one player with a 1st round grade at 31, much less 2. But Jesus, defensive tackle, no matter what, at 31. I mean, I would always say you can't go into a draft like that. You can't go into a draft saying that you're going to take X position no matter what, because you might end up with a guy with you have a third round grade on doing that.
Yeah, you don't. It's no matter what. It's all circumstance and situations.
Yeah, I mean, if the right player is there at 31, if the guy that you like, if you got a first round grade in somebody that's fallen into the 20s, I mean, you got to think about moving up to go get him. And then Brian, coming in, odds of taking a D end at 31.
How many questions has Brian gotten at this point?
We might have to cut him off here at some point. But, I mean, once again, I mean, it just depends on how the first 30 picks go.
I don't have anything else to add. We'll see how the draft goes, man.
Chris asking for you, Nick, do you think the window has closed for the Chiefs?
No, because Patrick Mahomes is still the quarterback. Steve Spagnuolo is still the defensive coordinator. Dave Merritt's still the secondary coach. Joe Colin's still the defensive line coach. Brendan Daly's still doing a good job with the linebackers. Like, Andy Reid's still the head coach. So, no, window hasn't closed. Are teams closer to him to where the Chiefs have less of a margin for error? Yeah, teams are getting their roster at that point. So that's why the Chiefs need to have some impact guys that can really continue to keep that distance from them from other guys. And they need an infusion of speed on offense.
100%. Brian's getting one more question because I actually do understand this, because I think my lighting has been off, Nick. And you all will see it later. We did an interview earlier today that you will all see at some point. That's all I'm going to say. Nothing else. Just teasing. Some of the draft coverage is coming up here.
You can tell the name if you want. You can tell who they are.
I'm planning on. I want there to be some suspense here. I'm just saying it looks like that this player was interviewed by Nick Jacobs and Casper the Ghost. So. Okay. Because I did not have my lighting 100% on point.
And this player here's the other tease I'll give away. This player ran drills in the NFL Combine this weekend.
And did very, very well, by the way.
We got their perspective on it.
That's right.
So they're one of the players' perspectives we were wanting to get initially. And there's other draft prospects we are working to get their perspectives on over the next month and a half. We'll see how many of them get to work out. And, because we got Joe Alt to work out, but this time we're going to try to get some other ones as well.
And I badly want to get somebody and do an interview with somebody that the Chiefs take. So that's my goal.
That was one of my goals last year, but Kingsley people said no.
We were that close.
We were. We were close on that one.
We were close.
Yeah.
From Pano, so it's obvious Isaiah is finished here. Did the Chiefs trade him for an extra pick or bring in another running back prospect? I'm not sure I can grant the premise of the question, Nick. I'm not sure that Pacheco's finished in KC. Are you?
So where people are getting this from is, well, I'll tell you the backstory behind it afterwards. But there was a report out there that the Chiefs allegedly want to evaluate how he does this year, how he returns to form before they're thinking about doing an extension with him. So people have gone their different directions with that report to give their perspectives on it. So either way, you need to get an explosive running back, plain and simple, from this draft class. Go get yourself an explosive running back, have that to lean on. If you get another running back, I'm from the draft, I'm not going to complain, but I hope you got more picks to do it. So
yeah, that report also to me is sun comes up tomorrow morning. It's always going to happen.
Such is life, Matt. Such is life.
Lightning round. There you go.
Matt, you missed AZ Chiefs up at 7:36. What the heck?
What did I miss? I did miss AZ Chiefs. Oh, no.
Jeez.
Does anyone think the Chiefs' offensive line looked like $100 million line in the Super Bowl? Everyone making $20 million plus now? Not sure I see its value return.
Sunday's podcast.
Literally from the Sunday podcast, Stacey Chiefs.
Podcast.
You would love to listen to 41 as the mic from Sunday, because
you should.
literally a 20-minute conversation about exactly this kind of topic.
It was more than 20.
Probably was more than 20.
I know it was because I kept tabs in the top left corner where it gives us the count.
I was just along for the ride.
Right.
I said with love. Oh, I'm once again in Korea. How good would Luther Burden be in KC? Awesome. That's all I have to say. I know. I'm starting to become a homer, aren't I? I've heard this question a couple of times too. Rick, if Bolton leaves, why not sign Willie Gay?
I mean, I think it's in the cards. Like, I wouldn't be stunned if Willie Gay came back here, whether Bolton's here or not. Because, I mean, it would just depend on what type of role, if they want him to have a starting role, if he would be a depth role, how they go about it. If Bolton is gone, then is Drew Tranquil the Mike linebacker? Do they want to try Leo? Is Jack Cochran that guy? Do they want to try Cam Jones in that spot? So Brendan Daly will have that answer, as will Steve Spagnuolo. And we'll go from there. And you got a question at 7:47 after this.
Okay, I'll come to that in a second. We do have another Jesus with another super chat question. We talked a little bit about the DT at 31, no matter what, but running back at round 4. I mean, my only quibble, Jesus, with the DT at 31 is again just the idea that you take a position no matter what. To me, is always a bad decision. It just depends on whether or not the right player and the value is there. I mean, it could be that getting a DT in the second, third, or fourth round is a better choice because it's better value. It's just who the better player is available at 31 will always be the choice. But as far as like a running back at round 4, that might make a lot of sense too, because there is a ton of value in this year's running back draft.
Yeah, I'm not stuck on you have to get a position in this specific round no matter what. There's just positions I want to make sure the Chiefs get. One I would stay away from unless it's really, really special, and I don't think it's going to be. I would stay away from running back in the first round. I think there's just as good a value in the third or fourth round at running back as there would be with some of the guys that'll be there in the second round. And there's only one running back that's probably going to go in the first round. So, and he's from Boise State, Gentry. So I don't think that one's going to work out that way. And there's going to be some good defensive tackles that can fit the Chiefs at 1 and 3 tech. And I'll openly admit I'm finishing up defensive tackles tonight. So I'm through all the offensive tackle. I was through all the offensive tackles last week. I've been working on defensive tackles all week. So I got about, 8 more left, and then I'll be done with that, and then I'll move on to the next position group that I am interested in. And then you will get to hear about them each and every week as we break down the position groups on 41 is the Mic every Sunday after free agency gets done. I just won't tell you which ones are which.
That's right. It'll be a nice little surprise, but it's coming, so don't go anywhere. So, and then you told me
7:47.
47. The Chiefs need a lot of different positions. So which position would you be cool with the Chiefs not addressing in the draft?
Matt, go first.
I've got a lot of people who still say safety, and I am fine if the Chiefs don't address safety in the draft because I think they got a ton of safeties that they like really, really well. Obviously, quarterback. I mean, if you don't get a quarterback in the draft, that's not a bad deal for me. Anything else, I mean, is up for grabs. I mean, and like I said, if the Chiefs feel like, if they feel like there's a safety that can help them and they take one, great. But if they come out of this draft without a safety, I don't think they need one. So,
yeah, if I'm in the Chiefs' shoes, like you want to get a running back, you want to get a receiver or a receiving option. Ideally a receiver, but if you want to get a receiving option in general because the tight end is just too good, that's right there. Totally get that. And then would it be cool to get an offensive tackle? Sure, but don't force it. And there's a lot of defensive linemen in this draft. This is a chance to really beef up on your pass rush and be able to keep that cost down while your offensive line cost is a little bit higher. So this is a really good opportunity to do that, and it's a good opportunity to get another cornerback. So those positions I just listed, those are the ones that honestly would probably take up all the pick. So that's why I'm saying if you can get more picks so you can continue to add on to that, that's what you should do. But I understand if they don't get a linebacker in this. I understand if they don't get a safety. Interior offensive line, I think you're kind of wasting a spot right then because of how much you invested last year. And then you don't really need to take a quarterback. And you really don't need special teams. So yeah, I think wide receiver, defensive line, cornerback, and running back, like those are the ones that get what you can and try to get the best player on your board at one of those spots and just go from there after that. But get more picks if you can and get all those spots.
Yeah, I 100%. I will. You're certainly right. I would add center, guard, interior offensive line. Absolutely. Special teams, kicker, punter, especially, yes, to that pool. Correct. And the positions you labeled as the ones you need to get. Yeah, definitely. So there's a handful of positions that I would be cool with the Chiefs not touching.
But I mean, that South Carolina safety, I'm not going to pretend that athletic performance would be something that I would ignore if you're the Chiefs. Him and Jaden next together would be just woo.
Oh, I mean, again, if it's the right player, no problem taking the right player, even if it's at one of those positions. But if they came out of this draft without one of those, at any of those spots, like I said, don't think that they're huge needs. So let's see where. Oh, yes, there we go. Devontae got released. If he agrees to a team-friendly deal, highly unlikely. What would you think, Nick?
I think he's either going back with Aaron Rodgers or he's going to the West Coast.
That seems to be the popular. So I assume that's going to be the West Coast because, gosh, I mean, I know the Jets and the Giants are dumb enough to get Aaron Rodgers, but I mean, I guess that's just the Giants because the Jets have already done that. But I mean, yeah, I don't know why anybody would do that. So I guess he's going to play on the West Coast if he's going to play. But even if he weren't, I don't know. That seems like just too much of a hot mess for the Chiefs.
Because, for example, like the Chargers could use him at wide receiver. Like Justin Herbert could use him. He'd help out Ladd McConkey a great deal. 49ers could probably use him on the right price, depending who their quarterback is. Should be Brock Purdy, but we'll see. And then, I mean, you know, he would do good in the Rams system. I don't know how much they're willing to pay for him. And then, well, the Giants are gonna needs if Aaron Rodgers goes there, like, you know, he's probably gonna want Devontae there with him. So, I mean, I think Devontae's got another year or two left in him. But if I were in his shoes, I would do more what helps him stay in the league versus what allows him to continue with Aaron Rodgers personally.
And he is going to be 33 this year. So, I mean, technically speaking, the wheels could fall off at any point in time. And hey, maybe he wants to go to New Orleans and hang out with Derek Carr again.
The tread on the tire is definitely wearing down.
Patrick with a name I have not heard a lot. Would you be okay with Dan Moore Jr. signing in free agency as the left tackle?
I looked at him and
of course you did.
I don't think he's going to be leaving Pittsburgh personally. So I'm expecting the Steelers to get something done here in the next handful of days. I want people to know, whether you're wondering about Trey Smith or you're wondering about a player who may hit free agency. And I know Trey's tagged and everything, but right now, an agent wants to get to Monday after 11 a.m. to formally get the offers and to hear what the number is and to see if what their client has been negotiating with another team or what they've been negotiating with the current team is the same as what another team's offering, and to use that as leverage against their current team that may be interested in them. So hypothetically, let's take Chris Jones last year. I had heard there was an AFC West team that happened to be in Las Vegas that was very hot to trot on Chris Jones. And they were hoping he would hit the free agent market. And they were going to spend a lot of money to get Chris Jones to potentially go there and be a Raider. Once Chris Jones came off the market and the Chiefs, gave the deal that was more than likely in the same ballpark as what Chris would have gotten on the open market, Raiders did this crazy thing and they signed the second best guy behind him, Christian Wilkins. So, but you had to get to that point where it's close to it, to where the reality comes that player may actually go to another team, may go to an opponent in your conference or in your division, and then that's when the new deadline comes, to where the team's like, yeah, you know what, we're willing to do that now. Because there's the exact opposite that got to unfold on Hard Knocks this past year with the offseason with the New York Giants, where they chose the other thing and they said, we have so much respect for Barkley, we're gonna let him go test the market. And then they let him test the market, and then they called back with the number, and Joe Schoen didn't match it. The owner is documented as saying that if he went to the Eagles, it would make him sick. And then Barkley went to the Eagles and helped them get a Super Bowl and just got an extension. And now there's no more offseason Hard Knocks because no NFL team reportedly wanted to do it. And even the North Carolina Tar Heels, as of apparently this morning, turned it down as well.
And what I love about that, Nick, is that, do you remember we had this conversation after watching that episode where they were talking about Saquon and the decision-making process? You and I had the conversation the next day. There is never going to be an off-season Hard Knocks ever again because of this. Because no one is going to want their laundry and their decision-making process played out like this and have everybody see what kind of a bunch of morons they are.
Well, first, the GM has to be at that level first. So there's that part of that puzzle.
Yes.
So.
But for your owner and your GM to both just look absolutely clueless. There's not a team in the NFL who saw that and thought, yeah, we want to do that.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how the NFL is going to resolve it, because it was more interesting than actual Hard Knocks.
It was the best Hard Knocks ever because it was so informative. It was too informative because it told us exactly what's wrong with the Giants.
The only thing that if NFL Films and HBO Max and all that, whatever they want to call themselves these days, wants to do, the only thing they could do is convince teams to do a Hard Knocks from draft weekend. And I'm being serious.
That would be fantastic. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
So, that to where the teams where NFL Films or each team's own crew is in there with them, and they are there for that draft weekend. They get 3 days worth of content of shooting from there. They're a part of those 3 days, and it's multiple draft rooms. So it's an NFC team. And in my opinion, it should be teams that are at different levels. So you have a team that's in the first overall pick. You have the Titans. Then you have a team on the back end, whether that's the Chiefs or the Eagles or whoever that's there at the end of the round. Then you have another team or two, if you can, and you have, maybe that's in the 10 range, and then you have another one that's there in the 20 range, and whatever happens is whatever happens. But ideally, one of those, you want them to have the most picks possible, so you guarantee yourself content. But I think a Hard Knocks that is purely based on draft weekend, you could get 5 episodes out of it, because you got the first round, you got day 2, you got leading up to the draft in whatever way you want. Then you have the day 1 event, or first round. That's its own episode. Then you have another episode from day 2 and day 3. Then you have another episode of the 4th through 7th. Then you have the final finale episode where the players come in. You have the undrafted calls that happen and everything. You have the GMs doing the pressers, and then you just get to see the draft of itself. And the NFL's done that before on Roku, but it hasn't done it in a Hard Knocks fashion. So I'm saying if they've got to deliver on that, that's my advice on how you deliver that. And then you already got the NFL film crews that are going to physically be there on draft night in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
I mean, the 2020 NFL draft done virtually was fantastic. And just getting to see, Bill Belichick with his dog. I mean, that was a fantastic end of it. So, I mean, I don't know if we're ever be able to top that, but what you're talking about would be just as close. And it would be fascinating to me. I mean, we get to see snippets of this, but we get to see the sanitized parts. We get to see, the phone calls to the players, and they're edited to make them look cool and everything. And so, I mean, it would be really nice to see an unvarnished look at all of that. And I just, especially after the Giants did what they did on Hard Knocks, I just don't know if any other team is going to have the guts to put themselves out there like that again, which is unfortunate. I mean, I'm torn, very, very torn, because on the one side, I mean, I love the fact that the Giants were so real and everything, although the Giants just showed you that they have so many problems and why they have them, and they just put all their dirty laundry out there. But I just wish that other people put their dirty laundry out there too. And maybe it's clean laundry. I mean, if you're the Chiefs or the Eagles, do it. Let's show some people how it's really done.
Hey, if you can convince Howie, because see, here's the thing: the other NFL would watch it just to see how Howie does some of the stuff that maybe they don't know about, so that they can become
absolutely,
better GMs.
Absolutely. So, no conscience with another interesting question. How would you feel if the Chiefs drafted 2 offensive tackles within the first 5 selections this year?
I'm assuming you mean with their 5 picks.
Their first 5 selections, yes, not the first 5 selections of the draft. If they could pull that off, Nick, I think it would be very impressive. But
yeah, I mean, look, if they take an offensive tackle, okay, now you got to develop them. So, I mean, the hard part isn't taking a tackle. The hard part for them right now is developing that tackle and getting it done in a quick enough fashion. So that's why we've talked about maybe going Ronnie Stanley. That's why we've talked about maybe going DJ Humphries. That's why we've talked about maybe bringing back Donovan Smith, because you're going to need a veteran in front while they try to develop the person behind them. So, and the last time the Chiefs had a left tackle that was a rookie out there was Kingsley this year. And then after 2 weeks, they said, yeah, we're probably not going to do that anymore. So, and I'm talking that was, because Wanya Morris was out there during his rookie year at left tackle a little bit too. But in terms of staying power that's been out there on a regular basis, even Eric Fisher wasn't at left tackle his rookie season, because Brendan Albert was at left tackle. So, it's not an offensive line. Offensive tackle is not an easy position, whether it's left or right. And so rookies being thrown out there in the fire, they've got to have special athletic ability, solid technique, quick feet, and the ability to already re-anchor by the time they get into the league to be able to be successful that first year.
There you go. And, and one reason why I wouldn't say it's absolutely crazy is that the Chiefs need 2 tackles. I mean, they're going to need a tackle at right tackle at 2026 as well, because Jawan Taylor's going to be off the books. I mean, technically he could be beyond that, but he's going to be off the books after this season. So you need a right tackle. Do you feel like you have the right tackle of the future on this team? Is it Wanye? I mean, the Chiefs are talking about Kingsley as being a guard. So, I mean, what are the other options? Is it Ethan Driscoll? I mean, unless you feel like you've got the right tackle of your future on this team, you need 2 tackles at this point. Not a question, but Alan was very kind enough to say that this is the best Chiefs podcast in Chiefs media right now. And I would like to argue with him, but I try not to argue with people when they're right.
Thank you, Alan. We appreciate it. And Matt and I do recognize sometimes that words that form sentences that we say become talking points throughout the week at other spots.
And sometimes the words that I say, sometimes the words that I say actually form sentences too. So
that's awesome. Congrats.
Alex, if Caleb Johnson is sitting there at 31, are you taking him, Nick?
The running back out of Iowa? Again, I just said earlier I wouldn't take a running back at 31.
The first thing I do when I do
linebacker.
I mean, I was going to say the first thing I get is the Iowa running back, but
yeah, well, it's spelled Caleby. He's the linebacker for the Jaguars. Kalb. Johnson's the running back from Iowa. No, I think Caleb's going to go in the second round.
There you go. I skipped a question. I apologize.
Come on, Matt.
I know. Tony, which player drafted, parentheses bust, set the team back the most? Lucas Niang, Sky Moore, or Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Right, we're going to go to that draft class, and we're going to do Revisionist Draft. On this edition of Revisionist Draft, we are going to look at some picks that may or may not have gone well.
May or may not have gone well.
And we first revisit the COVID era of 2020. With the 32nd pick, the Chiefs selected Clyde Edwards-Helaire. After his injury, things were never the same. With the next pick, the Bengals took T. Higgins. T. Higgins could have had a pretty good career here in Kansas City. Michael Pittman would have had a solid career here in Kansas City. DeAndre Swift, the next pick after that by the Lions, would have been he may have had a pretty good career here. May have been a dynamic running back in some certain spots. Then we have to go down pretty significantly in the draft to the end of the second round for a guy that I hope the Chiefs signing free agency in Christian Fulton, but we'll see on that front. Then the Chiefs took Willie Gay. So in terms of that, it made you be hesitant to take a running back in the first round long term. And Jonathan Taylor, like say the Chiefs go Jonathan Taylor instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you're not really, you're not worried about that part. All right, so then we go to 2021 in our draft revisionist edition. And let's see, the next one on that list is what? Lucas Niang, right? Or is it Sky Moore?
Well, Sky was in 22, but both CEH and Lucas were both in 2020.
2020, we're going back to 2020 for Lucas Niang in the third round, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yes, Lucas Niang with the 96th overall pick. After Lucas, Akeem Davis-Gaither you could have had, then you probably, I don't know, would have depended on what happened for Willie Gay. I don't really consider not being able to draft Gabe Davis a big thing. You may have taken L'Jarius Sneed earlier than what you did. But that didn't really, in terms of that draft class, that didn't really set them back. 2020 was actually a pretty tough year in overall draft. So I'm going to go to 2021 now.
2020 was a pretty tough year at draft-wise. And also, it was a total crapshoot because everything got wiped out. The combine didn't exist. There weren't any pro days. It was the least informed draft of all time. At least in the modern era. They drafted without. Back in the old days, sometimes every once in a while they drafted guys that didn't exist. So I don't want to pretend like in 1963 that drafting was perfect.
Chiefs like Leonard Hamilton. And then I'm looking at 2021 here. There's really, I don't really. That one I don't beat the Chiefs up on too much in terms of picks. Don't get me wrong, James Cook would have been great. The running back from the went to the Bills from Georgia at that time. Yeah. James Cook, we're not talking about that Chiefs run game would have been dynamic with him. That would have been fun on that front. But looking through here, there's really not a lot that you're like, boy, they really missed out on that one.
Yeah, it's hard for me because would Clyde have been my pick? I never really considered that being an option for the team. Now,
Khalil Shakir, that was, but you got to go all the way to the 5th round on that.
Yeah,
so
that's too far that's too far back for me to go to. Like you said, James Cook in that draft instead of Sky Moore, but also James Cook also went after Brian Cook. So, if you're the Chiefs, you had 2 chances to take him and didn't. So clearly not on your board. So I don't know if I that one's a little bit more difficult just because the Chiefs had another pick coming up. And so, there's really only 7 guys in between there. Are you saying any one of those would have been a difference maker? I think if the only thing that I think probably set the Chiefs back more obviously than of any of these guys, honestly, is the fact that they've invested a lot of time in the Sky Moore and just didn't get anything out of it. I mean, they got something out of Clyde. They got a good year out of Clyde.
Mm-hmm.
And without injuries, they would have gotten more. Lucas, I mean, that was a weird one from the very beginning because after the opt-out year, he just kind of never really regained his form. And it was probably not a bad deal anyway because he was going to be hurt. And he might have even, who knows, he might have even spent the year not playing as a rookie because he had that injury coming out of college. I think it was the shoulder or the hip or both.
He had a hip issue.
So, I mean, it could have been that he didn't even play much his rookie year. So maybe it didn't matter that much. I get with Clyde that there's 2020 hindsight, but what I remember, because I don't remember a lot of people, Nick, saying to draft T. Higgins. I remember a lot of take an edge rusher, and the only edge rusher that I really remember seeing in the list that I remember people being advocates for and really wanting the Chiefs to take was AJ Epinesa. And would the Chiefs be better with AJ Epinesa right now? He's been a decent player, but
sorry, I'm going through my going to find who I had in my mock draft. It's gonna take me a minute.
Well, then you're gonna make me check and see who I had in my mock draft, and that's when I could probably be even more embarrassing. Let's see what I can come up with here, as everybody can hear me type. Yes, for those of you watching, Nick and I had a conversation earlier today about the fact that I need to get a new keyboard, so you all can't hear me type during the podcast.
I didn't say anything.
Well, it was a conversation we had. I just started it. True.
Let's pump the brakes on me telling you, Matt, you need to do this. So looking at my 20, are you ready for my 2020? I just pulled up from KSHB.com.
Lay it on me.
All right, so for my 2020 mock draft, I put Jalen Johnson, cornerback, Utah. Then the second round, I had Antoine Winfield Jr., the safety from Minnesota. Third round, I had Logan Wilson, the linebacker from Wyoming that ended up going to the Bengals. I had Devin Duvernay, the wide receiver from Texas that went to the Ravens in the fourth round. I got a center in the fifth round. That was the draft class. That was it right there.
Well, there you go.
Now I'm going to look at my 2021 if I can find it. That's going to take a minute.
Well, I found my 2021. I just haven't found my 2020 yet.
2021 mock draft. Chiefs.
Us scrolling through our browsers is fascinating and riveting.
Well, Matt.
Broadcasting, I'm sure. I just joked.
All right, going through my 2021. Ooh. All right. So I had to update it after the Chiefs traded for Orlando Brown because I originally had Hollywood Brown going to the Chiefs. And then I saw that all implode. And so I was like, well, all right, I got to change it because I think I had Hollywood Brown going to the Chiefs. Yeah, then they acquired Orlando Brown. So I had I had Jason Owen from Penn State, defensive end. Then I had Terrace Marshall, 63rd overall. Then I had Sean Wade, the cornerback from Ohio State. I had Derek Barnes in the fifth round. Kenny Yabue from Ole Miss. I had Brady Breeze from Oregon that I don't think is in the league anymore. So, look, Matt, the only mock draft that's ever really mattered for me was the 2013 one.
That one was fantastic, by the way.
Are we able to find that one? Because there's people that will have absolutely no idea about that one.
I remember it quite well.
Well, but let's surprise some people if we can find it.
I'm doing a fantastic job over here.
Matt, I'm proud of you. I'm really proud of you. I'm gonna send it to you because I don't think it'll let me share the screen. I think only you're allowed to do that. So I will send that to you on both of these. Matt Derrick, he's a person who knows person things. 2013 mock draft. So if you have any more questions, now would be your time. All right, I just sent that to you.
Yes, I will stop scrolling and choose a question for one of us to answer. So
no, you're good. Yeah, so we're past that one. What's next on? I don't even know what time we're at right now. Oh, we're at 7:55. So we've already talked about Caleb. We're already there. See. So 8:08, we can give Brian another question.
There we go. There you go. So 5-year gap until late round draft talent comes back up.
I don't know. I mean, Brian, here's what I'll say for this overall is like when the next CBA comes out, what they're going to have to discuss as a players union and the NFL may have to make a concession on is can they get the players vet minimum salaries above what NIL can give them, especially in the first through fifth or sixth round to really kind of force guys to make that decision. Because you're not going to be able to do anything about the transfer portal no matter what. But if you can make the vet minimum more than what most of those guys can get from an NIL perspective, then I think you'll see more guys that had the chance to maybe go in the fourth, fifth, or sixth round actually take that opportunity to enter their name in the draft and go about that front.
There you go.
And then you got Jedi at 8:16.
I was going to say, I saw the Jedi at 8:14 with the salary cap sucks. LOL. Jedi, should the Chiefs use pick 66 to trade up for a left tackle, or should they keep all the picks?
Right now, they need to keep all their picks. If you're trading to move up, in my opinion, you're probably using something from 2026 to make that play up there. Because you have to, so hypothetically, say the Chiefs are at 31 and they need to trade up. You're probably going to have to use some kind of combination of a second, third, and fourth in 2026. I'm not saying you're using all three, but I'm saying like you're going depending on the team, most teams are going to try to hit the Chiefs pretty hard and be like, I'm sorry, man, we're going to need your third and fourth in 2026 for that. We can't just do it for this. And then there may be a team that's like, yeah, we need one of your thirds this year to be able to do it. And how badly the Chiefs want that player will determine if they have to potentially move up in that spot. So I just feel like pick 63 and pick 66. I think there's some ability. Depending what players drop, I think there's some opportunities for the Chiefs to be able to trade back in those two spots, to be able to pick up an additional pick in third or fourth round to help them. But we'll see. But I think the second and third round is going to be pretty rich with talent, to where that's going to be a spot where a lot of guys are going to come out of there and really have an impact on the league.
There you go. I'm the same. I mean, I feel like the Chiefs need to get more picks if they can. Great thing would be they can trade down from 31, but and we just had the conversation about the Clyde pick. I mean, if the Chiefs had their druthers, they would have traded out of that pick. Wasn't anything against Clyde. I mean, maybe they would have traded back and still have tried to get Clyde, but they would have loved to trade out of that and get more picks. I think in this position, there'd be a couple of times where Brett Veach, I think, would like to trade out to get more picks, but at the same time, I also know that Brett Veach is going to be pretty aggressive, so he might trade up if the opportunity strikes. If the Chiefs can't get their guy at 31, what is the default position?
Just depends what's on the board, man.
It does depend on what's on the board, Brian. It depends. Guys, is Veach trying to get that high-flying offense back with a top defense?
I think they'd like to be more explosive, and they can do that by getting help at running back, wide receiver, and they have to tight end, but I think running back and wide receiver where they can really add some explosiveness to really kind of push that offense forward. Obviously, they got to get the left tackle position resolved in whatever way they're going to, but yeah, I mean, wide receiver and running back, those are the spots they can bring high flying back for you.
My browser's being very, very slow. Otherwise, I will have your 2013 mock draft up very, very shortly.
Go for it, Matt. All right. 821, Joe E.
That's exactly where I was going next.
Outstanding.
Joe, I think draft running back would help Patrick's game and the offensive line that is pass blocking most of the time.
Feels like more of a statement, but we'll go with it, Joe. Yes, no, they need speed at running back to help the offensive line from a run blocking perspective, to where if it doesn't work out on the play and they're not able to necessarily create the hole that the running back can find it quickly enough, get through the burst, and the offensive line, it isn't so dependent on offensive line being perfect in their blocks every time and creating a specific hole for running back to run through. So yes, it would help overall.
There you go. Well, if you, I was going to say, let's see, how about we go to KC Harold again?
Yeah, next one.
Yeah.
No, they're not. No, I would never expect them to ever let us in the draft room on draft night while things are going on.
It's a great idea, though. I mean, they should really seriously consider it.
They're not going to do it during the draft.
But they should really seriously consider it.
Now, Matt, what if I were to tell you I've been in the draft room before?
On draft weekend?
No. What if I were to tell you I've been in there before?
Well, I'm less impressed if it was just like, some random other time. But I'm still kind of impressed because I've never been in there.
What if I were to tell you I've been in there after they made their picks?
Well, how long after they made their picks?
I don't know, handful of days.
Oh, okay. Well, that's still fairly impressive. I mean, I thought you were going to say like 6 months, but
No. No, I'm not going to go any more depth on that, but I can just say I've physically been able to sit in that room before, and Therese and I may have nerded out a lot afterwards.
Dang, you were in there with Therese? Oh, wow. Now I'm super jealous.
There's some other people. I'm not going to name names.
I apparently need to have an off-record conversation about this one, but all right.
It's 2023. It's the 2013 mock draft.
Yes. There you go. And with the first round selection, Nick Jacobs selected Eric Fisher, Central Michigan.
The reason I'm always going to be happy about this one is simply because I didn't know Dorsey and Reed that well yet. I had no idea what they were looking for.
First draft, for crying out loud.
I had no idea what they were looking for characteristic wise, what they were about, what they truly wanted. I didn't know. I just went on what I knew from Andy's time in the scheme before and what Dorsey had done at Green Bay, what the influence was up there. So, it's easier when the Chiefs were the first pick in those rounds. So I'm not, I didn't have to decipher through a whole bunch of other things that may happen in front of them. But I was waffling between Eric Fisher and Lane Johnson, but I knew Eric fit more of who they were and was less of a projection than Lane Johnson was going to be. But I mean, Lane ended up having the bigger career. And I mean, people were talking, is it going to be Fisher, Luke Jokel, or Lane Johnson that year? And then Eric Fisher was kind of the one that people knew the least about or didn't like the least, and the Chiefs were brave enough to go take him. Had a good career here, won a Super Bowl. And then Kelsey, look, I mean, like I said and I said in my report there, Kelsey was a mismatch for most defenses, and you could see it on tape. I mean, he could block more than people gave him credit for. Him and Fisher both had mean streaks, and I knew they would set a type of tempo in that locker room what the Chiefs were trying to put on tape. So I know that some other guys, it didn't pan out in that draft further on down, but hey, such is life.
Hey, but Jordan Rodgers went on to be a Bachelor, right?
Yes, Aaron Rodgers' brother went on to go be in The Bachelor.
See, so that was an all-star mock draft of yours. I mean, I still remember I was watching the draft, and and I knew you had selected Eric Fisher at number one, and that wasn't no brainer. I mean, a lot of people can probably say that because, like you said, I mean, it was basically. And I give you credit for even throwing Lane Johnson into the conversation because most people were down between Eric Fisher and Luke Jokel. But then I remember when the Chiefs took Travis Kelce at the beginning of the third round, I was like, wait a minute. Jacobs took Travis Kelce in his mock draft, and I went back and I looked at it and I was like, the dude is 2 for 2. I mean, Eric Fisher was one thing, but getting Travis Kelce that far into the draft, nailing it, that was impressive.
Then it was never the same for me in mock draft history. So peaked right there.
It's a heck of a peak because even the best honestly, if you get one pick correct in a mock draft,
you've got our other one up right now.
Oh, whoops! There we go. Sorry, click the wrong one. Yeah, there we go. live YouTubing. It's a thing.
All right, I think we got some final questions before we get on out of here. Before our power goes out, mine already flickered once.
Oh well, Brian was once again credit to Brian because I see everything's slowing down for me here. It's not a good sign. Hit that like button. So.
Like with the wind, dude, just you better be ready.
Do you remember where we were at?
Oh, yeah, you were at 822. Sorry, so you're getting ready to go 822 with Dedrick Smith. He had one.
There's your go. There you go, Deldrick. I see Eric Driscoll as a Eric Fisher type. Do you see Driscoll the same way?
I'm not. I guess I'll have to go look that name up
because I'm thinking of
because I know Jack Driscoll is with the Eagles, and then I know the Driscoll is with the Chiefs. Ethan Driscoll.
Yes.
So maybe he's combining Eric. Ethan Driscoll.
Maybe you're that. There you go. Maybe that's what you're thinking. Interesting. I hadn't thought about it in those terms, but he's about the same size. I mean, Ethan Driscoll's a big dude.
Yeah, Ethan's really athletic, and I mean, he's like I said, I've talked about throughout the year. Like, I mean, he just needed a couple of years in the weight room and to get a good punch, and like I think he could threaten for a starting position, at least be a serviceable backup, if not potentially be able to have a starting position. So yeah, Ethan Driscoll's a guy. That's why I'm like, hey, I think they have a right tackle of the future with Ethan potentially. And I mean, they have a guy that could be depth and Wanya Morris potentially. So that's why I'm not like, hey, the Chiefs got to get multiple tackles.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say that is probably the biggest difference between Driscoll and Fisher might be that mean streak, but I can still see Ethan tapping into it, and maybe that's the difference between him being a right tackle and a left tackle. But there's no doubt. I mean, Chiefs really like what they saw last year, from him. I mean, they liked him well enough to keep him on the 53 the entire year. So maybe we're overlooking Driscoll quite a bit here as far as being in the conversation. More Devontae questions from Steeman, but we kind of talked about that earlier.
I think we're getting close to the end.
Joe, how good of a running back is Hamilton in the draft?
I haven't really gone through all of the running backs at this point.
I was going to say, I couldn't, not sure which one the Hamilton is either. So we'll get back to you on that one, Joe.
So,
Alex, will the Chiefs look to bring back Stephon Nelson for a vet in the cornerback room? I'll be honest, Alex. I mean, I really think that the bringing back Stephon Nelson was just kind of a gesture for the Chiefs. I think they were trying to get him a ring. I really do. Just because he wasn't with them during the Super Bowl runs. He left just before everything started because his last year with the Chiefs was 2018. And I think that was the reason they really brought him back. I mean, he was basically retired when the Chiefs gave him a call. And I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe he's got that back and he wants to be a part of things. And maybe will want to give it one more road and one more run, but I think it was really the Chiefs were just trying to maybe tap into a little bit of his experience, leadership. I don't know, but I think they were really trying to get him a ring, Nick, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think if they saw him a part of their long-term future, I think they would have played him there on the back end and everything. And
they had some opportunities, and I mean, and they made it pretty clear he was kind of break glass in case of emergency.
All right, Matt, we're down to our final questions here before the power goes out.
All right. More likely, Brett Veach trades up or down?
I'm hoping trades down to get more picks.
That would be the best move, but the reality of it is it depends. He's going to do both. It just depends on where. He's going to trade down at some point to get more picks. He's going to trade up somewhere else. Alex, what about Najee Harris?
I think I think he'll get bigger money somewhere else. I don't necessarily think he's going to have to do a prove it deal personally.
All right, last one, Nick. If I can get it up here before the power goes out. If you were to trade back from the first round pick, what range from the second round pick would you want back, and what else would you want back in that trade?
So in terms of trade-wise, personally, I would like to – you're hoping you get somebody there in the high 30s, between that 33 to 38 range. With each pick you go backwards, you want to – if you do trade back, you definitely want to get a fourth at minimum. If a team's willing to give you a third and fourth, do that. Boom, done. But if you, with each spot you go back, like if you go back into the 38-41 range from that 31 pick, yeah, you better be getting a third and a fourth. You better be getting multiple thirds or multiple fourths to be able to go back that far with what you're risking. You're gonna have to sell that to another general manager. Be like, hey, my guy's here on the board right now. I can take him. You got to make it worth it for me right now, man. So you just got to play hardball on that front.
Yeah, and everybody uses different trade value charts, so it can vary. But I'm with you. I mean, yeah, if you're trading, depending on how far you go back. I mean, if you're trading out of the first round into the second round, you want a minimum of fourth. I mean, depending on how far you go down, you might even want more than that, and maybe a lot more than that. So if it's just a few spots, I mean, but a fourth round pick is, I mean, it's still got value. It can be used later. I mean, if you're trading down in the first and you get a fourth round pick back, that might be your currency to move up later. If maybe, moving out of your 62 pick. So, I mean, you've got some options. Or 63. I'm doing my math wrong.
Yep. So, final call for questions. If you got them, now's your chance. Otherwise, Matt and I are going to get out of here, or Mother Nature is going to determine for us that we do get out of here.
And so,
give you a 5 count.
Give you a 5 count. And as always, last chance to remind you all that we'll be back on your stream Sunday. 41 is the mic. Next Tuesday, back here again. We've got a regular schedule, and we will we'll have some little bonuses here and there too.
Yeah,
never know when we might pop up with some additional funsies.
Mm-hmm. You may have another one popping up your way. Matt, don't forget to take a screenshot before you're done.
I was thinking that earlier, and then I forgot.
You always want me to remind you, so I just reminded you.
I do. I appreciate that. So actually, I may have to do a phone because it's not letting.
That's fine.
Everything is weird.
Give you the promo to close us out, though.
All right. I know this has been
last question with Alex before you go.
For Alex, Nico, okay, there we go. I like Nico. I think he could be. I mean, I think he's still high end as Justin Watson, and if he could give you a little bit of Justin Watson, that's good.
I think at minimum he can be your returner on both punt and kick.
Minimum,
trying to see if he can integrate himself in more in the offense when preseason rolls around. You want to see him running with the twos throughout training camp and in preseason if to take that next step. That's what you're hoping to see. So,
yeah, I mean, my expectations are not terribly high, but yeah, if he could give you a little piece of offensive work, that'd be great. And I think he's got it in him. So I don't think by any stretch they've tapped all of his talent quite yet. So let's see what happens.
All right, man. All right. It's promo time.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you once again. We'll see you next week, everybody.
It's all things Chiefs right here. 41 is the mic, a Chiefs podcast on your home of the Chiefs. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts. Also available